When it is pure, the whole body is pure. When it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Verily, it is the heart. I can't get into all the details here, this would be a whole other lecture, but from a Quranic perspective, it is the state of the heart and only the state of the heart that really matters with everything that is done. There's a famous saying attributed to Prophet Abraham in the Quran. It says that on the day of judgment is, quote, a day when neither wealth nor sons shall profit, save one who comes to God with a sound heart. And when the heart is sound, the entire human being is sound. And the ego has, in a sense, already died, one might say, as the Sufi tradition puts it, to the world. Now, ultimately, all of these ideas, patience, beauty, virtue, mercy, they're present through one another and with each other in many ways. And so one of the most important verses of the Quran in this respect, it states, "O you who believe," and here it comes after a verse that's talking about the Jews and the Christians. And it's this verse 200, Surah 3. It says, "O you who believe, be patient, vie in patience." Actually vie with one another in patience. Persevere and reverence God, that haply you may prosper. And there are two verses of the Quran where it is said that those who believe are those who enjoin one another to patience and who enjoin one another to truth. Tawasaw bil haqq, to truth, and tawasaw bis sabr, and enjoin one another to patience. So ultimately, patience, I would say, there's more than I want to say. There's so many verses I want to cite in this context, so we're coming to the end. But ultimately, it is patience that can be seen as being at the root of all these things, and at the root of having the sound heart. And it's interesting, in the process of preparing this lecture and thinking about the heart, I had a very interesting experience, just that my eldest daughter is 9 years old. And all of a sudden, she started actually talking about the heart, like knowing something isn't there. And the heart, at times, feeling empty, even when you have everything that you need. And it's really interesting because, this is one of the great things about having kids. You start to realize what other people in the world are talking about. And I came to realize through that this is actually, when we talk about, religions, why is it that at the age of such and such, the age of puberty and everything, that you have to start praying? In the Islamic tradition, in the Christian tradition, in the Jewish tradition, it's all that these are the points in which one becomes responsible for these things. But in a sense, it's because actually the Islamic tradition says the heart is made for God. And it's at that point that in order to really be a human being, one needs prayer. One needs that. Otherwise, the heart is going to seek other things. And it's through that process of seeking all of these other things that the heart will not be at peace, that the heart will not have patience, and that from a Quranic perspective, it will gradually cease to do things with ihsan, or that is, with beauty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. That was quite amazing. I learned a lot from that lecture. We have 10, 15 minutes for 20. Oh, 20 minutes. Is that amazing? 20 minutes for Q&A?
Oh yeah, no, that's. I asked Hamza, and he said that we should have 20 to 30 for Q&A. So yeah, no,
Awesome. So yeah.
I want to leave it open for Q&A. So the more questions, the better.
You have it.
Yes.
Hi. I thought that was a great little talk you gave. And at the beginning, Islamophobia and Sam Harris were mentioned. And just to represent the other point of view, Dr. Harris often states that he doesn't want prejudice against Muslims to be propagated, even though certainly many Westerners do have prejudice against Muslims, and that he only wants to criticize the bad ideas within the religion that aren't able to be edited away or changed through modernization, such as the idea that says if you leave the religion or betray the religion through apostasy, that you should be killed if you live under Sharia law. And some people do, and some people do suffer that consequence, or the oppression of women, or the incursion upon free speech that we see. And don't you think that even though there are many parts of Islam which teaches peace or restraint or patience, and there are many people of this faith who do only follow that part of it, don't you think that there are parts of Islam which need to be criticized, such as the oppression of women or the inability of some people to leave the religion without fearing for their life?
Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, this is a very good question. The question really is there's a degree to which it's how do you criticize it? So what we tend to experience with people like Sam Harris and others, Bill Maher, Bill Maher, for example, one time he said, every page of the Quran has violence on it. I've translated the Quran. I can tell you that not every page of it has violence on it. And the thing is that if you're going to do that, so just as one could say that there are Muslims who need to step up to the plate and acknowledge some of these aspects more fully and tackle them, at the same time, you need to look within the tradition for that which can serve as the balance against it, and that would be these types of teachings. For example, this is why. This is actually exactly why one of the things that they say in the classical Islamic traditions, they say that the differences between scholars is a mercy. It's recognized that you're going to have scholars. Human beings are going to oppress each other. There's a very famous saying of the Prophet Muhammad. It says that you must aid your Muslim brother whether he is being oppressed or oppressing. All right, so the Prophet's companions said, okay, how are we supposed to help him if he's oppressing? And he says, by stopping him from oppressing. And that is a general principle. Now, for example, this thing that you mentioned, I can't get into all of the details, but there's one thing that you mentioned about the apostasy laws in some places. There are apostasy laws, in classical Islamic law, there are so many things that when you actually go into how you apply it, Islamic law is not a code, ever, under any circumstances. Classical Islamic law is never a code. It is a completely and utterly case-by-case law. And so in each instance, and if you go through, you'll find instances where somebody did actually leave Islam, even during the life of the Prophet. Nothing was done. People let them go. There's actually a verse of the Quran, 2:256, which is said to have been revealed regarding this, which says that there is no compulsion in religion. And some say that this happened when there were 3 Muslims who had joined the community, who actually went and followed their Christian families and went back to Christianity. So that would be technically a case of apostasy. And so one comes up with the question, well, okay, so why does Pakistan, for example, have these laws? These laws would actually be considered, they are considered, and they are criticized by a lot of scholars to be laws that are not ones that are in accord. And so, but there is a process within Islam whereby that will come. If you come from the outside, especially in the current global situation, and you say, based upon my secular principles, you should do this, what you're doing is you're just going to make people hunker down and say, no, I'm going to stick to this. And this is basic human psychology. And that's one of the reasons why in some places they're holding on to this. And so it's look within the tradition for those things. And they'll be there. Just as when we, in the West, we look at something, we look at some of the laws that have been on our books and we say, we need to get rid of that. We don't sit there and say, well, what did they do in classical Hinduism? We should look to the Hindu tradition for how we address this. No, we look at the tools that we have, and we look at what we believe to be the best of our tradition in order to change that. And I'd say it's the same thing within the Islamic tradition. Any other questions?
Sure. Do you think ISIS is representative? Are they accurately interpreting the Quran? And if not, what are they doing wrong?
Well, let's see, what are they doing wrong? How much time do you have? So, no, well, look, there was a letter that was written, there's letters back then, signed by over 100 Muslim scholars. I mean, we're talking about leading scholars from across the Sunni world, that, addresses it, but it does it based upon classical Islamic theological principles about what they're doing wrong. One of the fundamental things that you need to know about ISIS is that there is no single Muslim scholar considered to have been of repute before the rise of ISIS and to have had classical training that supports ISIS. Not a single one. That should tell you something.